and welcome everyone. For all the live attendees, feel free to use the chat for any questions or comments or topic that you want to talk about. There's also the QA feature that we're having a look at if you want to use that. We will share the recording as well with everyone that participated or registered. And yeah, that's basically it. So, hello, Joep from Zeeman, and hello, Frank.
Hello.
Thank you both for joining this interesting discussion on showing some real-world use cases and some real case organizational transformations. So, yeah, I'll go with you first. Who are you?
Who am I?
Feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Joep Stokman. First name is Joep for people that are confused. People that speak English get confused real fast. I'm 21 years old. I've been working at Zeeman for a little over 2.5 years now. Definitely my first step into the young professional world, the young professional, and as we talked about before the webinar started, it's a great chance to show what is possible. Definitely for me. So who's Zeeman? Zeeman is a retailer for affordable quality textiles for everyone. Zeeman is operating in 8 countries with 1,300 stores. And basically, the core of the formula is simplicity and multiplicity. To get a bit of an understanding of who the company is for people that are not familiar yet. Yeah, I think that's it, Robert. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Thanks, as usual, that happens. So, thank you, Frank.
Frantically trying to unmute myself in Zoom. So, hi, I'm Frank Feulner. Currently, I'm leading the content technologies area at a company called SIGNA Sports United. There was a time in my life when I was also involved with AX semantics, writing a lot of the early algorithmics, and some of you may know me from the business development area of the company. But today, SIGNA Sports United is my game. So what is SIGNA Sports United? It's one of the biggest retail groups for sporting goods, and it's a pure player in the e-commerce market in Europe. And in the recent years, we also have been expanding to the US markets and have been acquiring some of our market companies in the British market and in the Commonwealth markets. So basically, if you're buying a bicycle, a camping article, or a team sports article, or a tennis article around the world, chances are never zero that you are buying it from SIGNA Sports United.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, let's give everyone a few minutes to talk about what they're doing currently, how their content production works, what scale you're going for, and what's happening. So, over to you.
Yeah,
stage is yours.
Yeah, good to elaborate a little bit on that. Should I share my screen already?
Yeah, I think that would be.
Cool. So this is my chance to share a little bit about Zeeman's approach and how we automated high quality content production for over 10,000 products in 27 different categories so far within 5 months, and managed to reduce my workload with 60%, around 60%. So I told a little bit about the company already, so I'm going to skip that part. Within Zeeman, it's also good to elaborate on a little bit. I am responsible for all the product content, mainly the product descriptions and a bit of product management overall within our e-commerce department. I started here a very basic package of tasks, mainly writing product content, product descriptions. On a weekly basis, we have a throughput of about 80 to 100 products, and what was basically, and I'm going to the next slide, this was me until 5 months ago, writing all of the product descriptions on our website manually. I basically took every product, I get a sample of every product, I look at it, and I manually write a product description. And then somebody in the company actually suggested semantics, and since then the little robot with the pencil on the right has become my good friend. So at first we were a little bit skeptical. We have a lot of different products in a lot of different categories, and we have very low amount of attributes. That makes it very hard for us to. We thought it would be very hard for us to automate our product descriptions, since we have very little details about all of these products. We basically started out mapping all of our overall categories with men and women, kids, baby and newborn, etc. And to give us a little overview of what products do we actually, what categories do we actually sell products in. This is a little overview of how we actually take on this project. I stole it from an earlier semantics webinar for the people that are thinking this looks familiar. That's true. Basically, the overview on the top left, it basically shows that we are working category by category and product by product. We are choosing, we are going for quality of copy and coverage. So what I said, that means we start at category 1 and we just take the first product. That can be men's clothing and then men's t-shirts. This receives, this actually delivers us detailed quality copy because we spend more time in one product category and we actually get longer text. Because compared to the manual enrichment, we simply do not have the time when I have to do anything manual, all of it manually, to write the amount of text that we are now putting out from semantics. Now I only have to put in the time once, and it comes out every single time. And another advantage is also that we have the right copy at the right place. So because we are not reusing all that much statements, we are 100% sure that the right content is at the right product. A little disadvantage is speed. Even though we reduced our workflow with 60% in 5 months, we could go faster. If I look at other product use cases of semantics, and also the L approach, which was talked about earlier in another semantics webinar, we could be going a lot faster. But we really made a conscious decision to go for the quality of the content. We do not want to cut down on the quality just because we want to go faster. Basically, the end goal right now is to save time and also to save time and make sure that the output is better than what we did manually. That's the main objective for now. So then it looks a little bit like this. A lot more text, also a lot of text about the composition, which I think is important because we sell mostly textiles. I think it's good to inform customers also about the advantages of a certain textile. When I say one product within one category, we do not actually do one product. We take one subcategory. So, for example, here you have a heavy cotton bed towel. Because we have very little attributes, we look mainly at the product title. So we put the rules and conditions in there in such a way that it checks the product title, and then it can decide what type of product it is. And then beforehand, we already how do I call that? We looked into the specifics about that certain product. So the buying department is around the corner here. So those are these people are definitely helpful to give me some details about different products. When I work down this project, there are a lot of questions that come up. I just walk around the corner. I can ask them for input so that I can move faster through the project. So we basically look at the product title, and then we say, okay, if it's in another case would be the men's t-shirt, what content can we create that is applicable to all men's t-shirts, because we have very little attributes. If I break the product description down a little bit, you see two parts. The first part is just a little bit of introduction in the product. Why do you need the product? And the bottom part is about the fabric. And then to make them differentiate and make them appropriate for the product, of course, we use the variables which are in the green boxes. Overall, I think compared to what we're doing manually, we're doing better this way. We're doing a lot faster. To give a little bit of insight on how we are structuring this within AX Semantics, we are using one story for every product category. And then within a category, we are using the statements to describe different products. So we get, at the end, we get a couple of dozen stories with multiple dozens of products within each story. So that if something is wrong, we can quickly find where we need to be. It's very, very structured that way. And then to top it off, we are now looking into translations, because this is also a big thing for us. We right now have about 40,000 products in our catalog. Those are not products that we currently sell, but we bought them once and we sold them at a certain point. So we need a lot of translation for the products in 8 different countries, because in all the countries that we have stores, we currently also have web shops. And actually, this tool is in beta. We got a spot in it. I don't think everyone has already tried this out. But we are now very busy on trying to make this work for the French language within our project. And if we worked out a little bit, how this works and how we can go along the steps to complete this, then we can roll out to other languages. And to give a little overview of how far we are, how far we've come within 5 months. I said before, we reduced our workflow with 60%, but actually, if you look at all of the 40,000 products, we only have 26.7% right now enriched by AX Semantics. And the reason for this is that we started the green part is mostly filled with products that we get most often. So we really specifically picked the categories that we have most products in. We started with those to make the biggest workload reduction in the shortest amount of time. And the product categories, we have about 90 of them, about 90 different product categories. And that varies from accessories, from hats to scarves, but also clothes and pens and t-shirts. So it's very, very wide range of products. Also, about 30% of them are covered as of this moment. What I said, plus minus 60% reduction of workload, and the goal is to get to 90 to 95% reduction of workload by the end of 2023, and I think we are right on track to make that. So that's a little bit of an overview of how we take on this project so far, Robert.
Thank you. Reminder to the audience, feel free to ask initial questions. But when you said that the quality is better than manually, what exactly, or what's your take on what quality of content is? Because text quality is a very subjective thing. So
I agree.
What's your take on it? What's your take on it, or your organizations in this case? Yeah,
that's good that you mentioned that. Of course, when I have a product in my hand and the text that I write is just for one product, I can really write really specifically about the small details of the product and the fabric and how it feels. And that's an advantage of getting a sample from one product, but that's very time consuming. It just takes too much time, especially when you look at the throughput of articles. If we get 100 products every week here, sometimes we have even higher peaks. It just takes up too much time. I think my view on quality content is also because we thought less was possible with very low attributes. So the output that we are getting, I consider high quality for the amount of time that we're putting in.
Yeah, that just came up because I said quality is something that is always hard to measure. But you mentioned earlier in the talk that for you personally, you do think that good quality for a product description is when they convert. Is that right? Did I understand that?
I do not think that. No. As I mentioned before, the main goal right now is to reduce workload and to come as close to what we did before with manual enrichment. A next step would be if we save time, then we have time left to look into what converts better. I think that's the way you should look at it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. A nice impression about the project. Frank, do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing?
Yes, please. So I'm also going to show some slides. So please bear with me for a second until they actually show on the screen. And Robert, maybe you can signal me
if it's... Yep.
They work?
All fine.
Awesome.
They work.
Okay,
First
so
try.
we're going to skip a lot because this is actually the roadshow of my area within this big corporation. But I wanted to give you an impression in what bigger framework this whole topic of content generation can be put inside of a corporate organization or even a group structured organization as SIGNA Sports United is. But I think what's kind of the bottom line, and it's also the same as for every other company, is at the end of the day, content is a sales tool, right? So if we view why we are actually putting every product through an enrichment process so that it can have a description and features and media, it is always because this is going to help customers decide for this product and ultimately identify this product when browsing the online shop for the product of their desire. So if you want to break this down into metrics, what we are being measured by is threefold. So first of all, and Joep, this is probably where we overlap a lot, it's time to market. So when it comes to designing a content enrichment process or a content generation process, the biggest question we always have to ask ourselves is, do we actually get faster? Do we get to reduce the cycle time of a product? Do we get to onboard more products with the given staff, right? And this is where natural language generation comes into play. This is also where all the localization approaches that we have come into play, because manual translation is a lengthy process and it doesn't quite scale, right? And this is also where those big foundation systems like the PIM database or the digital asset management system also come into play by helping automate these processes, by helping funnel data into such sophisticated third-party services as AX Semantics or Reason is the translation suite that we're using. But they're all no good. They're all not saving time if you have to put each text in there manually. So time to market, that's the big one KPI that we're working for. And the second one, Robert, that probably points to your question and to the quality discussion. Second biggest lever for us is conversion. So the reasoning is basically if a product, especially those very techy sports clothing products, those very techy bicycle spare parts that we have, if it isn't explained properly, if there are white spots on the mental map of the persons buying them, then it is relatively likely that someone views the page but doesn't convert on it, right? Then we cannot build enough trust and the decision quality isn't high enough. And at the end of the day, they just bounce and go to someone else who has that little bit of information and can confirm their internal bias. So we're expecting, and we're also seeing that every measure that increases the amount of information that you can receive about the product basically always has a direct influence on conversion. And this goes for natural language generation, just having a non-marketing, objective, facts-driven depiction of the product instead of Shimano telling you that the GRX group was not specifically developed for gravel riders. Like, you know, that kind of stretch between actually having tangible information about the product and then getting emotionalized about it. And that also goes for systems like the PIM or the DAM that just improve the quality of information that you can filter and search the product by, that improve what's going into the bullet list. And ultimately, they also improve what's going into the AX semantics record, because information that you don't maintain cannot be fed to an automation, right? So that's how we improve conversion. And then there's another factor in which all of it kind of comes together, and that's campaigning. So if you look at how much friction is in the campaigning process, where authors and graphics people and marketing people and performance marketing people have to work hand in hand, then putting all of that into a mutual optimized workflow and making sure that they can coordinate with the least amount of friction and the maximum amount of objectivity, that's a super huge factor. And we are assuming that we can double the frequency of campaigns within Europe just by putting the processes out of Google Drive and evil emails that are being exchanged and into a proper workflow-driven solution. Okay, you see that I'm getting into sales mode, so let's maybe jump to the tech landscape that we are putting below that. So the enlightened part here, that's basically, or the highlighted part here, that's what we're building. And to the left and right, you can see the interfaces that we're serving. And the whole content tech area that's basically set up between getting something from a vendor catalog or from a foreign ERP system, from a foreign PIM system, and putting it into a sales channel. Everything in between that's content technology. And we can basically cluster it into two big lines of activity. So on the one side, in the bottom side, you can see everything that helps us store content about the product. So this is where Riversand PIM comes into play. I think actually I just saw a question in the chat about what PIM systems you're using. Maybe at a later point in time, I can elaborate what type of PIM system we were looking at for realizing such a domain. There's also, I mean, this whole data quality topic starts relatively early in the process. So there's also a product data onboarding platform that just helps us condense and normalize the information from our, I think it's several thousand vendors. Internet Stores alone has 1,000 bike vendors. They all have different formats, and we need to make sure that we get readable and normalized information from that so we can feed systems like AX Semantics. And this is why this is also a major project for us. And then on the top side, you see all the tools that we use to create content. So while the bottom tools store the content and manage it and manage where it goes, these tools on the top side basically cover the creative processes. So you can basically see three pillars. One of them is digital assets, imagery. That's probably not so much the focus of today's round, but to the left, we have the notorious candidates, AX Semantics. We have machine translation as a whole cluster of systems. And then we also have large language models as an emerging type of technology. And they all work together. They all have specific purposes and specific niches in our content strategy, so that we can basically offer the whole portfolio of content forms, from the editorial long form to the actual product description, to every customer in all of the 20 nations that we are. I think it's maybe even more than 20 nations, but the last time I counted, it was a strong 20 that we are covering with our products. I think I'll make a cut now. I could probably go on forever about the strategic fit, but Robert, you mentioned you had some questions, and maybe that's a good point in time to hand over.
No, we're going for discussion. So, yeah, so we've now seen, I would say, two different types of AX usage. One corporate architecture-driven one from you, Frank, and you one very practical one that also, I mean, 95% of a reduction or goal as a reduction in effort is also, well, it's pretty similar goals, so same goals, different organizations, of course. But what do you think are critical factors for the success in your respective organization or problem fields?
Quickly look into the notes because I had pondered about that question a lot. So I would say, if you really want to scale up a content organization, and if you want to make sure that your process it gets localized into all the languages you have, I think a lot of this game is being won by focusing. So when we set up our team, we made sure that we had an organization that was exclusively responsible for product content, so that all the things like long forms or being the internal translation agency of the company were just out of the picture, and so that this team could actually focus on making the learning curve for NLG, getting familiar with data-driven ways of producing content and getting the hang of it. And this proved a big success factor, to be honest, if not the biggest. Joep, what about you?
Yeah. We can do it Instagram or TikTok style. What are the 5 critical success factors that you want to give to others?
Do we have to talk that fast then?
We'll do that in the post-processing, just speeding up it and cutting it. Yeah.
Robert, can you rephrase your question one more time? Just get a little bit of a better understanding.
Yeah, sure. So what do you think were critical factors for the success? I mean, you went in a few months from zero automation to content automation. What do you think what made that successful? Or on the other hand, what could you also think about what would be detrimental if it would have been there for others to look at?
Well, I think that that's a very deep question. I think.
Okay.
So actually, what you're asking is what is needed to go from zero content
Maybe.
automation to something.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I think as I explained before, we have very little. We had a lot of products, a lot of categories, but no attributes. And I found AX semantics to be very useful because there are so much technical possibilities within the system. Even though you only, as we are using AX semantics, we only have a product title, and some attributes and some overall specifics of certain products. But it's very undefined. So we were definitely struggling with that. But I think that could be different for everybody. I think the way you are approaching it really asks for, in the way that I experience it, for your own view on how you do that.
Maybe adding into that, because you just mentioned data scarcity and just starting out with the title, it's actually an experience that we share. And it's quite counterintuitive because we had a huge team maintaining product information, but it was structured in a way that it wasn't machine readable. So there was a lot of free text in the data. There was a lot of information that just wasn't atomic. It could be read in several ways, and you couldn't quite put your finger on it by writing a rule. So this was actually a huge learning how to couple the teams that were making product features and maintaining the feature model with the team that was training AX semantics, so that they would actually talk to each other and understand the needs of each others.
Yeah, interesting. Because you're talking about teams working together and setting up things. When I look at myself, I'm a lone player on this project. It's me running around here at the department asking people for certain pieces of information to make this thing work. So it's very, very funny to hear the big difference in that.
Yeah. So how does your organization perceive that? I mean, you're basically, as you said, the lone person going through the organization. What is their take on somebody doing automation for copywriting suddenly? I mean, that's kind of, for an organization, that's kind of sudden.
Yeah, well, it's what I was doing was very time consuming. Every time I write a text and the product sells out, maybe it's a good to give a little bit of background behind that. I think the majority of our assortment are products that we buy once and sell once, then they're gone. Every product that I put time in every product and I write a text, as soon as the product sells out, your time is gone. Here, my time stays preserved. Every product that adds on to the catalog gets automatically enriched and gets a product description. So I think it was for us really when the person within our department presented this possibility to fill our product content, it was like a no-brainer. We were like, if this is working, we were skeptical, but if this is working the way it looks to be working, then it's a no-brainer. Then we could save so much time and keep the quality that we currently have and make time to improve it and start looking at the conversion and all of those things.
Mm-hmm. And you're now doing the same with multi-language content. If you got your presentation right, you're now looking at using the translation packages and translation features for doing that for other languages as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're just trying to copy everything we have now in Dutch to French, and that requires also French attributes. We are doing now all the distribution of the data between the different products. So I'm extracting all of the data from our CMS. I'm putting it into AX semantics. AX semantics is reading it, but I'm doing that manually. We do not have yet have a automatic connection between the systems. So it's really also part of like trial and error. Is this working or is it not working? What do we have to do to fix it? So looking at the translation, we're going to have to collect all the French attributes. How is that coming out in AX semantics? How are we going to use it? Do we have to translate any rules or conditions for all the statements to work? So it's really like trying and see what works, and then we are going to after we succeeded in that for the French language, we have an understanding of how it works. I'm just going to roll out, and what we're also doing is we're working with an external translation company, and we're just with this tool we can give them access to the tool and not to our whole project, which is also a big advantage. They can just enter the translation tool. get a default translation to happen first, and then they can go over, see if there are things that need to be changed. This can go on in a very fast rate. We have about 120 statements right now, I think. So yeah, it's really, I think not a lot needs to happen if I look at it from right now.
Yeah. So you're trying to do the same 95% workforce or workload reduction for the other languages, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because the same text before, the manual text that I wrote were also being translated over and over again. So even if it's the same text, it goes to the translation company, gets translated. We only have to translate every statement once right now, and then it's automatically added to every product that qualifies. Big advantage.
Speaking of data, you mentioned you're doing the data translation thing now as well. I think, Frank, you already have probably that. Even you're looking more and more down the line of the journey. So how good is your data for other languages?
So actually, that's a complex question. So we do have a localization process that basically starts when we onboard a product. So those essential things like titles and all the things that you need to handle it in those various warehouses across the world, that basically gets translated very early in machine translation. But then it gets complex because for all the products that are already covered in NLG, of course, it's an NLG translation in the languages that we are already having NLG. And you can imagine it does take some time. It does take 1 to 2 years actually to get through this whole big portfolio. I think we have 21 or 22 big portfolio clusters that all require 1 or 2 months of training. So we have to go hybrid, right? There's this cool new world in which we can actually just say, hey, let's put it through AX semantics and then it's fine. And then there's this old school world in which we just have to go through a cascade of machine translation steps. So what we usually do is we shoot a so-called unapproved machine translation into the system, just so that something is there, right? That functions for most of the languages we have. For some of the Nordics, it doesn't, because MT engines are not good enough to be run unsupervised. For these, and basically for all the products that have a high margin, we resend them to a translation tool in which they get a human supervised translation. That's Zeeman. It's quite interesting because it also tackles this problem of translating the same bits and pieces over and over again, just by having a sort of translation memory or semantic asset matching that basically just fills in for the proportions that already have been translated. And that goes so far that it can even deliver an automated translation without us having to supervise it if the tool says, well, I'm 95% confident that I know what I'm doing, right? And after that, there's another process in which we actually write individual translations, and that mostly goes for our private label brands like Nuproof, Vitis, Votec, where we really have to represent the brand spirit of that's behind the development of this bicycle. There we cannot just let a Google translation go, and also it's so emotionalized we cannot do NLG, and this is where we actually write ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then inside of NLG, of course, we're using the translate feature. So it actually triggered a quite interesting dynamic, because we usually gave our translations to an external agency that's also specializing in AX semantics training. That's Unice, and they handled the translation processes for all these bits. And we will still be working intensively with Unice, but we will refocus them on gaining ground, moving through the portfolio, learning new products, while doing the localization work more with our in-house specialists. I mean, we have 20-something translators in the house for various European languages, and it's basically gotten so easy that they have gotten so familiar to it that they can actually translate with the help of the translation package. So that was a quite interesting development.
Interesting. Yeah, because one of the things, I mean, that's also probably a good question for you. So, I mean, you are the lone player. If you would say you need to replicate it in other companies, what are the skills needed that you bring that make that possible to do? So, in Frank's world, it would be what are the requirements for the workforce, who to hire, what kind of skills?
I think that's hard to tell because of course, I have from my job, the way I started, I have a lot of product knowledge, and I think the knowledge about what you're selling and knowledge about how the system works actually also into the smallest details, because there's not someone that's just focusing on making the rules or someone that's just focusing on combining the triggers or something. I think for me, all that it took was just proper product knowledge, which I had because I was writing manual product descriptions for over 2 years. And I learned very quickly how to use semantics in the most efficient way possible, also because I got a great support from the person that's helping us on this project. So I think that would be it. I also, of course, because I'm working with product content, I have very good understanding of how systems are connected here, which data is being distributed where. I think that total that package of knowledge was enough for me to get where we are right now. It was very interesting to hear Frank, because he was talking about because of course you are with the translations, you are selling expensive bikes. You want to make sure that the message comes across in the right way. Of course, we have the same objective here, but our average price is about €3.50 for a product. So it's a very different business, and I think our approach could differ in that way too.
Yeah, maybe picking up on that, it's actually a bit of a different conversion, because people are usually like they're sniping for the products very, very long. And once they convert, they are usually at the end of a several-week journey that goes across several types of media. Like they read test reviews, they read forum comments, they read pinkbike.com or MTBR in Germany. And then you somehow have to reflect all the things and all the discussions that they have heard in this discourse and tell them, yes, this is exactly what you're looking for, and it ticks all your boxes. But essentially, I would say to make this work in such a big and fragmented, and I mean, let's be honest, the cooperation is always somewhat political, right? To make it work in this environment, I think the business teams who are actually training this, aside of all their excellent product knowledge and all their knowledge about the market and how to place these products, I think what they really need is capabilities to work with an IT team. So to be able to formulate a proper ticket, for example, to be able to describe a bug and to differentiate from a feature request, or to be able to understand some basics of our capabilities, like knowing what information you can actually draw from a data field and then when the machine would just be making things up, right? Those were the things where we saw a big learning curve. And the other part was actually business modeling. So being able to quantify how this is going to impact conversions and then how this expresses in actual sales and actual shopping baskets that are being closed was about, I would say it was a good third of the craft, actually getting it past all those various controlling and decision-making instances and getting them to believe that it's an investment case was almost equally important, I would say. It's sad but true.
Interesting, yeah.
Talking about data and that stuff a little bit, you mentioned earlier that you do work with PIM system, I think Syndigo currently. Why are you with that solution, and then what's the future in your PIM landscape in terms of tooling and also maybe in terms of team and feedback teams working together? So basically the other way around, what do you aim for in his organization for the next 10 years?
So was it a question from me as a Syndigo user?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, why is the landscape as it is, basically, that you showed? Yeah.
That's an excellent question, because I think we spent the better part of a year to actually figure out which system to go for. And the approach to pick it was driven by collecting the user stories of the various departments working with it, and then just really nitty-gritty validating every single one of them. I think it was 150 requirements. I think probably Ben Rund in this round has painful memories of that. and just validating whether they would be met. But what are these requirements? That's probably the more interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, for this size of an organization, we were looking at a relatively high degree of automation. So if you have, I think we have about 20 people who are maintaining records and another 20 people who are writing, and every hand motion that they are not doing anymore is a relatively big lever on the cost side. So automation was one thing, and the other thing we were looking for was a great capability to localize. So there were some very big bottlenecks when it came to conquering all these markets in the old infrastructure that, for example, just allowed us to have one record per language. So if you view French, for example, France, Belgium, and Switzerland would have to describe a bicycle in the same way with the same images. If it had mountains in them, then it was mountains, even if that's probably not so applicable for Belgium, right? And this was also something we wanted to emphasize a lot, facilitating how to get products differentiatedly into different touch points. And of course, since we are short on everything, but not on workforce. No, of course, we are not short on many things, but workforce is something that tends to be abundant in a corporation. We wanted to have a system that we can govern ourselves. So we didn't want to have to put something into Syndigo's backlog and then at some point in time the feature gets realized. We wanted to be able to develop it ourselves, and this is why we went for this particular system.
Interesting.
And then for you.
Yeah, if we look at Zeeman, Zeeman is a family company, very traditional, and especially at e-commerce where innovations are going very fast. The systems that we currently work with are very limiting. They do not allow for any of what you just showed or what you explained. So we're also with that on that side. As of this moment, also with this project, we have to be very creative. We are, by the way, we are looking to 2 new systems. So a project for DAM has already started. PIM system is also coming next year. So we are looking forward to that. Also, there when I hear you talk about this, there's a lot to learn for me as well. And it hits product content a lot.
No. Yeah, it's interesting to see that it's basically the same threads or the same motives that pop up every time. Like if you want to have scaling content, you need to have structured data first, and ultimately you arrive at those big data enrichment systems like PIM, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Robert.
No, that's fine. So just only happy for. Do you have any questions? Basically, my checklist is done. The topics that I had in the pre-talks with you both that came up earlier, I checked. We talked about all the multi-language applications. Because what's interesting for me was you both are different in scale in terms of product size and team size and its maturity, but you're also like 8 countries on one side and something like 20 countries on the other. So it's automatically multi-language if you're a European player. So that's always interesting to see the processes there and the need for multi-language.
So Frank, one question that I had when you were talking, you named a lot of advantages of using the NLG cloud using AX semantics. What's the main for the countries and the vendors that you are using AX semantics for right now? What's the main goal?
So you mean in terms of AX semantics or in terms of this whole localization strategy?
Just AX semantics.
No. So the main goal is closing the localization gaps that we have and making sure that we can govern every piece of content that we're publishing. So as opposed to the current state in which we are just taking, for the sake of scaling, we're just taking catalog content. So a lot of our products come with somewhat of a description, and we usually just kick out the faulty HTML tags and then we just publish them. And yeah, and that keeps a team of about 20 people busy, right? So if you put that into a machine translation solution, then we also have a linear translation of that, but we couldn't say this needs to be formulated differently for Spain, or this needs to be placed differently for Britain, or we have a lot of seasonal topics that differ between the very cold Nordics and the south of Europe. So all this needs to be taken into account, and this governance over every piece of content, that's the ultimate goal that we're following.
Okay. And is besides the translation, is also the main goal to include AX semantics in all of the content creation, talking about product descriptions, or are you aiming to still keep it on a manual basis for some categories?
That's an excellent question, and we have been thinking about it a lot. But the approach is actually to depict the whole assortment that we have, and then just harvest this time to market advantage. So for every product that basically gets online a day earlier, you have a certain number of impressions on that day and a certain number of hypothetical conversions. So, and we can always reorder the product, right? So every day we get it online earlier just prolongs the life cycle. And in this case, actually, we didn't want to differentiate, but we wanted to make sure that everything has a possibility of being insta-published once the data record is has a certain maturity. I wouldn't even say once it's done, but once it has a minimal maturity, and then we can decide into which follow-up process this product can go, whether it's going to be manually touched, whether it's going to be. Sometimes we also build complete custom pages for a product if we want to place it very specially, or whether it just goes into another cycle of NLG because we know that the record has been changed again. That can also happen.
Okay, interesting. And you mentioned that there were currently 20 people on this project, just AX semantics, implementing it to your product content strategy.
Honestly, the footprint is a bit smaller. So this whole team that is responsible for text and translations, that's 20 people. So thumb rule is actually one for every language. But if you look at the core team that does AX semantics, we set them up in the way that they mostly handle input from the translation teams, right? So we have a subject matter expert who's consulting the team when it comes to training what to say about the product. So this is usually someone from purchase or someone from the data maintenance teams who really have to know what is special about the product, what's average, what needs to be highlighted, or what needs to be hidden in a record. I mean, that can also be the case. Then basically we have a person who specializes in training. Like basically that's probably the most equivalent to you, Joep. That's the one specialist who's really good at AX semantics. I think our Joep is called Martina. And Martina basically is like an octopus, drawing input from all sides, coordinating that translation input gets to the translation teams, and but she's consolidating this whole AX semantics topic on her desk. So if you put the proper structure, you can actually work with an astonishingly small footprint, even in such a big scale.
Yeah, that was actually what I was looking for. I was looking for how many people in the team are actually in AX semantics, creating all the different rules and conditions, literally connecting the dots and all of that. But I get a really clear picture of that right now.
No, although my recommendation would be to train a second person, because every time Martina goes on vacation, she has to have a guilty conscience. So maybe we need to change that up a bit.
I have a vacation plan too of about 4 weeks, so I've yet to experience how that works out.
Well, the content production will be automated. Question for you, Joep, because Frank mentioned that he has the thing about the time to market for new products. So Insta publish is actually a nice buzzword. Actually written that down. So as soon as the minimum maturity for data is being reached, you're producing that content automatically and pushing it out. So I take that. And you mentioned that your average price per product is something around 3 to 4 euros. So I would imagine you're aiming for some of the same things, right? If new products come in, actually just putting them out in the wild, making them sellable without you taking care of that. Is that something that you have as a goal as well?
Yes, that's definitely the goal, because there are so many products. I mean, a product gets created in the core system that we use. That's more of an administrative task, and along that line, the product is being ordered, stock is being sent to the distribution center, and as soon as the stock is booked on that product, we actually want the product online. So I haven't actually thought about time to market that much, but now Frank was talking about it. The time to market is definitely faster. If I have around 100 products laying around here, I have to do all of them manually. the last one has a longer way to go before it hits the web shop. So it definitely plays a big role. Yeah.
And are you already doing that at the moment with the product categories that you are covering with automation?
Well, we are basically we are the ones that also in our content team, we are also the people that put the products online. The products disappear. The products get put in our web shop anyway, with or without a product description. And then it's just a matter of the sooner it gets the description, the better it is. We were talking about products with low prices. So I think the content plays a very different role than when you're looking at the products that Feulner Frank's business.
Yeah, but I do think that Frank's business, they do not only sell expensive bikes. I think they also have like maintenance and spare parts and stuff like that. But
okay, yeah.
Actually, that's probably a question that leads me to a question I wanted to ask to you, Joep. So in our assortment, there's always these little trickle down categories in which it just gets too miscellaneous to actually text for them. Like if you have tire repair accessories, then it gets really creative, and then at the same time it gets very scarce in data. Yeah. So do you also have any of these blind spots in your portfolio where you say, okay, this is just too heterogenic to apply rules, and also Definitely. How do you treat them?
Well, if you look at accessories, we have just like you mentioned, we have a lot of different accessories, belts, bags, name it. New products come up every single week. It's going really fast. So what I try to do is I try to break them up. What products are doing analysis with an AX semantics? What products do we see most, and take on the biggest categories first, leave the smallest one behind for a little while, and then we just work down that way. I think that's how I would say we approach it. We are going to keep blind spots anyway. It would never be possible to enrich everything, but maybe we can even say the categories that everything gets a little bit complicated. A lot of different type of products are also the products that are mostly lowest in price. So maybe there are other ways for us to other things for us to investigate about how we can enrich those products if we are going to do that with AX semantics. If we shouldn't do it at all because we didn't even really test with a product that costs around €2 or €2.50 if a product description really adds that much value. So we are in a very early stage in that way.
That actually gets me to another question. So a discussion I've been running into a lot in my career was, is content actually the factor that's driving this conversion, right? So there's always this one SEO guy who says, no, it was the meta keywords, or the SEA guy who says, no, it was ad revenue. And then there's the front end guy who says, no, it was the pink button, right? So what we did was we actually started thinking about determining whether content was actually read. So measuring the attribution, measuring the interaction with the content is also a part of this landscape that we're building. So what's your take on that? So did you have a hard time at all arguing that it is the content that's bringing the improvements, or?
Well, we are in such an early state in product content wise that I wouldn't have anything useful to say about it. We didn't really test anything. As soon as I came in here, I just started writing a product description about what the product is. It's a product that like €2 or €3. Sometimes it goes up to €10. Then you are a bit more specific, and that is what we did. So we have yet to test out what's working and what isn't working. Like I mentioned, is it worth adding a product description for a product that costs €2.50 and sells out in a month?
No, we'll probably hear about that in a year or something when you say that I have the conversion numbers as well. We're nearing the end of the time. So any last comments from you both?
No further questions.
Or more questions or something. Yeah. So I'll definitely exchange contact data between you both so you can ask each other more questions. But thank you a lot for your time and the insights. I really think it was helpful to lots of people who are seen a little bit different types of corporations that have the same goals, same issues, and basically the same kind of solutions for that. So,
okay, well,
thank you for your time.
Thank you, Frank.
Awesome.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks for having us. Thank you, Joep, and nice to meet you. And on that note, have a great day, everyone.